President Trump is weighing in on the sexual assault allegation against Joe Biden. The presumptive Democratic nominee has called for a search of his official records in the National Archives from his time in the Senate. Former aide Tara Reade claims she filed a report with the congressional office detailing the alleged 1993 incident. Biden has denied the accusation, and now President Trump is trying to capitalize on the controversy. The Washington Post takes a closer look in a new article titled "The Trump Campaign's Tack on the Biden Allegation: Focus on the Hypocrisy, Not the Allegation." Amber Phillips wrote that article. She's with us now to talk more about this. So, Amber, in an interview with the New York Post, President Trump slammed Biden's denial of the allegation. How is the campaign responding to this story? Because, as we know, the president himself has faced multiple sexual misconduct allegations.
Yeah, well, first let me lay the groundwork of like what we know of how willing President Trump is to attack his opponents, in just really like intense, almost dirty ways. During the Hillary Clinton 2016 campaign, in a debate with Hillary Clinton, he brought President Trump brought some of Bill Clinton's accusers to that debate. This was after Trump's Access Hollywood tape had come out. I don't see that kind of energy this time around. I see President Trump trying to accuse Biden of being hypocritical, saying, listen, when the shoe was on the other foot and Brett Kavanaugh was the one being accused of this, Democrats, including Biden, were out there saying you should presume that all women, when they come forward with something like this, are telling the truth. And now with Biden denying the allegation, you hear their campaign focus on the hypocrisy there, what they're trying to create as hypocrisy, rather than the actual allegation itself.
Yeah, Amber, you write in your article that Trump supporters seem to be lumping together Democrats, the media, Biden, all sort of in one big grouping when it comes to their attacks. Why is that significant?
Right. Well, I think that plays to another strong avenue with President Trump's campaign, which is, why don't we just create this one massive lump of an enemy against us? President Trump has tried very hard to frame the mainstream media as liberal and as, in conjunction with Democrats. And so when Tara Reade's allegation first came out, the Washington Post and New York Times were spending several weeks investigating it and vetting it before they issued their own reporting. And you had Donald Trump's campaign and Donald Trump Jr. out there tweeting saying, where is this coverage? When Brett Kavanaugh was accused of this in 2018, there was coverage almost immediately of Christine Blasey Ford's accusation, and trying to do this contrast comparison that they can then throw Biden into as well. The main tack here is hypocrisy. You can't believe what Biden is saying, therefore you can't trust him, rather than the accusation of, it sounds like he might have done this. Because like you said, President Trump has been accused by more than a dozen women of sexual assault.
I struggle to understand what the strategy is, Amber, because at least the vice president, you started to see a lot of women's groups that are giving the vice president, they're sort of saying that they appreciate that he took questions from a reporter, and albeit it was on a friendly news network, but the person who interviewed the vice president was pretty tough on the questioning, and he didn't disparage or denigrate the accuser. That has been very different experience for the women who've accused the president of the United States of sexual assault. And the president in each case has denied that he ever did what they allege. And so how can the president's son send out these tweets and stoke this anger from the president's base, with the president of the United States himself being accused, as you point out, of multiple instances of sexual misconduct? It just doesn't. And the president, when asked about it, he sort of treads very, very lightly on Vice President Biden. He doesn't really go after him the way you've seen him go after people for things that he doesn't like.
Right. That's exactly right, Vlad. I think the Trump campaign and the president himself are stuck not only not being able to attack the Vice President Joe Biden for his actions, but also his rhetoric as well. Like, they have a very narrow avenue here where they can frame it as Kavanaugh in 2018, here's what y'all said. 2020, you guys are defending Biden, therefore you're not believing women. But when you expand outward, back into 2016, the way President Trump has dismissed a number of allegations against him, I think it gets more difficult for them to make that case. And I use that word dismiss intentionally because I heard President Trump use that in an interview with the New York Post yesterday, saying, well, Biden didn't do a good job. He just dismissed this woman, Tara Reade. Dismiss is like a really difficult word within the Me Too movement because Democrats and a lot of feminist activists are trying very hard not to dismiss her, to say, listen, she should be heard, her accusations should be vetted, but I still believe Joe Biden. And so I hear President Trump kind of muddle that, but I think you make a good point, Vlad. It's like a very narrow lane that they have to reasonably make that argument.
And so I guess sort of the ultimate question is, and it's maybe too early to tell, is the sort of impact that this will have on Joe Biden's campaign. These are such strange times because he's not doing, your sort of typical campaigning that he would have been doing. So he's not out and about facing people. But I'm wondering, whether it's his presentation on what happened or Trump supporters' presentation on what happened. What sort of impact do you think this could have on his campaign?
Well, I think to the extent that President Trump can try to bring down Joe Biden and not necessarily raise himself up when it comes to being accused of sexual assault and misconduct and believing women and who's, stronger supporter of the Me Too movement, I don't see President Trump trying to raise himself up. To the extent that he can bring Joe Biden down and make, an independent suburban mom think, they're all bad. I'm going to stick with who's in office right now. I see that being a potentially successful avenue for President Trump. I think Biden's next hope is probably to try to find a way to put this past them. Can they find records that show, well, it's kind of weird because what they want to find is no records of any complaints that Tara Reade might have filed. Can he pick a vice presidential nominee that helps him move forward and unites the party? His campaign is dependent on us not talking about this in 6 months.
And we should point out there are numerous polls out there that show that the former vice president's trust factor is at a much higher level than the president of the United States. So if the idea, as Amber, you point out, is perhaps to sort of lump all of this together and to point to the former vice president and say, you can't trust Biden, the numbers show a very different story. Amber, really, really interesting article, really great reporting. As always, it's good to talk to you. I don't think we've spoken to you for quite some time. Good to have you on our air. And I guess you're also coming to us from your home. We appreciate it. We appreciate all that you do.
Live from the Amber Phillips headquarters. Thank you, guys. Happy to be on.